The door opened, and Zaid Rivers tumbled straight through a cloud of steam and expensive cologne into the coldest, most dangerous pair of eyes she'd ever encountered in her life. Jin-Ro stood there like some kind of dark angel, shirtless, water droplets trailing down his body in hypnotic patterns, following the contours of muscle and ink. Tattoos covered every visible inch of his torso, elaborate designs that seemed to move in the dim lighting, and his face wore an expression that told her with absolute clarity she had exactly 3 heartbeats to explain why she deserved to keep breathing. She'd just crashed, literally crashed, into the private penthouse suite of Seoul's most feared gang leader, a man whispered about in the underground, a man whose name made people look over their shoulders. A man who hadn't so much as touched a woman in 17 years. And Zaid Rivers, exhausted hotel maid with a cleaning cart and terrible luck, was about to completely wreck that streak. Listen, I need you to do something for me right now. If you're the type of person who gets emotionally invested in stories like this, who feels what Zaid's feeling in this moment, who wants to know if she survives the next 5 minutes, hit that subscribe button on Black Hope Tales immediately and turn on your notifications. And while you're down there in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. Seoul? Detroit? Somewhere else entirely? I want to know who's here for this journey. The hallway lights on the 12th floor of the Imperial Seoul flickered on and off like dying stars. The inconsistent lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, making everything look slightly sinister. Zaid Rivers pushed her squeaky cleaning cart down the corridor, her arms trembling so violently she could barely maintain her grip on the handle. Dead tired didn't even begin to describe her current state. She was operating on empty, running on fumes and pure desperate willpower. 24 hours. That's how long it had been since any food had passed her lips. A full day of nothing but water from bathroom sinks when supervisors weren't watching. Her stomach had given up complaining somewhere around midnight. It had simply surrendered to reality. Stopped sending hunger signals that couldn't be answered anyway. Just like everything else in her life seemed to be giving up lately. All Zaid could think about, the only thing occupying her exhausted mind, was her baby sister Cree. 21 years old and fighting for every single breath in their tiny apartment across the city. Sitting by the window in Itaewon right now, probably wheezing through damaged lungs, trying desperately to pull clean air into her body from Seoul's pollution-choked atmosphere. The pharmacy had called yesterday afternoon with their cheerful automated reminder system. That artificial voice delivering absolutely devastating news. Cree's asthma medication had increased in price. Again, another $400,000 per month. 400,000, one that Zaid absolutely, completely, utterly did not have. Might as well have been 4 million. Her supervisor's harsh voice played on constant repeat in her exhausted mind, like a broken record stuck on the worst possible track. Mess up one more time, Rivers, and you're fired. One more time. Do you understand me? Zaid gripped the cart handle so hard her knuckles turned white and her fingers ached. Kept pushing forward mechanically, one foot in front of the other. Just keep moving. Don't think. Don't feel. Just survive. Room 1205. That was tonight's assignment according to her work tablet. Simple job. Easy work. Fresh towels that smelled like industrial laundry detergent. Clean blankets folded with hospital corners. Restock the minibar with overpriced imported snacks and tiny bottles of liquor that cost more than her weekly salary. Basic turnover. Done. She just had to physically make it there without collapsing face first onto the expensive carpeting. That's all. Just don't pass out. The brass room numbers up ahead caught some light from the flickering fluorescent fixtures. Zaid squinted hard, trying to focus her exhaustion-blurred vision. The middle digit on the door she was approaching looked completely wrong. Messed up somehow. Burned out, maybe. Or deliberately scratched off by some angry guest with a grudge against the hotel. It looked like it might be 12:05. It had to be 12:05, right? That was her assignment. Must be 12:05. But Zaid was too exhausted to be certain. Too tired to double-check. Too terrified of Mrs. Sung's reaction if she wasted time walking all the way back to the service desk to verify a room number. That would be seen as incompetence, weakness. One more mark against her already problematic file. The door sat open just a crack, maybe an inch, just barely enough to see steam seeping out from inside like fog rolling across a moor. Zaid pushed her cart forward, aiming for the gap. The front wheel immediately caught on an uneven section of the hallway carpeting. Because of course it did. Because why would anything be easy tonight? She pushed harder, put her entire body weight into it, used leverage she didn't really have. The cart suddenly bucked sideways, twisted violently, then shot forward like it had been launched from a catapult, completely out of her control. It slammed into the door with a heavy bang that echoed down the quiet hallway like a gunshot. The door burst open wide, swinging on its hinges. Zaid stumbled inside after her runaway cart, desperately grabbing for the handle to stop the momentum before she crashed into expensive furniture. Hot steam poured out of the bathroom in thick clouds, carrying with it the scent of soap so ridiculously expensive it probably had a French name and cost more than her monthly rent. Rich sandalwood. Something dark and woodsy. Something undeniably masculine and completely foreign to her world of poverty and survival. The room, no, calling it a room was insulting. The suite was absolutely mind-bogglingly massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across an entire wall like something from an architecture magazine, showing Seoul's endless city lights spreading out like fallen stars into infinity. A king-sized bed sat perfectly made and completely untouched, covered in what looked like actual silk sheets that probably cost thousands of dollars. But the bathroom door hung wide open. And then he walked out of the steam like a figure from a dream, or a nightmare. Still unclear which. Bare chest still glistening with water droplets, hair wet and slicked back from his face, water sliding down his throat and muscled torso in slow rivulets that caught the light like liquid silver, following the contours of his body with hypnotic precision. The tattoos. God, the tattoos were everywhere. Dark, elaborate ink covered him like a second skin. Like armor made of art. Intricate designs ran up his sides like living creatures crawling across his flesh. Geometric patterns circled his powerful arms in perfect symmetry. Dragons breathing fire across his broad chest, so incredibly detailed she could see individual scales and wisps of smoke. The artwork disappeared down to his hands like animated shadows that never stopped moving in the shifting light. He was built like someone who'd spent his entire life preparing for war. Training for violence, every muscle perfectly defined, every movement controlled and deliberate and dangerous. His entire body screamed power, control, absolute dominance, danger, hard face with sharp angles that could cut glass, strong jaw, high cheekbones, eyes even harder than his face, and those eyes locked directly onto her with laser focus. Everything in Zaid's body instantly turned to ice. Her blood went cold. Her breath stopped. Her thoughts scattered like frightened birds. Everything just froze. She'd met powerful men before during her 7 long years of cleaning Seoul's expensive hotels. Wealthy businessmen with more money than morals. Arrogant politicians who treated service workers like furniture. Cocky celebrities who thought their fame made them gods. Men who consistently looked right through her like she was invisible, like she wasn't even human, just a pair of hands that cleaned their messes. But this man was something else entirely. Something different. Something terrifying. This man looked at her like he was making a careful, calculated decision between letting her walk out of his room alive or choosing from several methods of disposal. Like he was weighing options with cold precision, measuring risks, considering consequences, evaluating threats. 3 beats of absolute, deafening silence. Then he finally spoke. "Why are you in here?" His voice wasn't loud, wasn't angry or raised, just low and steady and perfectly, terrifyingly controlled. The kind of quiet voice that comes right before someone gets very seriously hurt. The calm before the storm. God, I'm so sorry, sir." The words tumbled out of Zaid's mouth in a panicked rush, tripping over each other. "I thought this was room 1205. The number outside is burned out or something. I swear I didn't mean to barge in. I would never—" Her voice just completely quit working, stopped functioning mid-sentence like someone had physically cut the power to her vocal cords. Earlier that same day, Zaid's alarm clock had screamed at 4:00 a.m. like it was personally furious at her existence. She slapped it into merciful silence with more force than necessary. Not that sleep had happened anyway. She'd spent the past 6 hours just lying there in the oppressive dark, staring at water stains on the ceiling, counting cracks in the plaster, trying desperately not to think about all the countless ways her life was systematically falling apart. Another night shift completed. Another impossibly long day starting before the previous one had properly ended. Time had completely stopped meaning anything real or measurable. It all just blurred together into one endless cycle of work and worry and crushing exhaustion. Their apartment in Itaewon wasn't really an apartment by any reasonable definition, barely qualified as a room. One cramped space with walls so thin you could hear neighbors breathing. 2 threadbare sleeping mats laid out on the floor with blankets that had seen better years. Black spots of mold spreading across the ceiling like something alive and malevolent, growing bigger every single week despite Zaid's best efforts to scrub it away with cheap cleaning products. Cree slept curled up in the corner, her small body folded in on itself. Her breathing sounded wet and labored and wrong, broken, like machinery grinding without oil. Each breath seemed like a monumental struggle she was slowly, inevitably losing. 21 years old, but chronic illness had made her look so much younger. Fragile, breakable, like she might literally shatter into pieces if touched too hard or moved too fast. Zaid forced herself to stand on legs that shook like a newborn foal's, stumbled into their excuse for a kitchen, opened the rice container with trembling hands, almost empty. Maybe one more meal left. The kimchi container held fermented vegetables that had been sitting there for 2 days, starting to smell questionable. That was literally everything they had, the sum total of their food supply. She pulled out her phone with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. Opened her banking app even though she already knew exactly what the numbers would say, already knew it would be bad, but seeing it in actual digits somehow made it worse, more real, more hopeless. W47,000, 47,001. About $35 American. That was the complete sum total of everything she owned in the entire world, everything she'd managed to save, all her wealth. The empty medication bottle sat on their cracked kitchen counter like a physical accusation, like evidence of her failure. Cree's prescription was due today, required by law to be refilled. No negotiation, no extensions, no refills without full payment made up front in cash. W400,000. 400,001. Money that existed only in fantasy and dreams and alternate universes where Zaid wasn't drowning. Her phone buzzed angrily in her hand, making her jump. The landlord. Again. Always the landlord. Rent was a full week overdue. The text messages had started out polite and understanding, then firm and businesslike. Now they were actively threatening. Lawyers, eviction notices, the whole devastating legal process spelled out in cold, bureaucratic detail. "I need an actual miracle," Zaid whispered to the empty kitchen. To no one. To God, if he was listening. "Or we're really done this time, actually finished." She stumbled into their microscopic bathroom on autopilot, looked at herself in the cracked mirror mounted crooked on the wall. The glass had a long diagonal fracture running through it from some previous tenant's anger, splitting her reflection into disconnected pieces. Appropriate symbolism. Dark brown skin that looked almost gray in the harsh fluorescent lighting, exhausted beyond measure, eyes that had completely forgotten what actual rest felt like. Dark circles underneath them like bruises. The pink and white hotel maid uniform hung on her increasingly thin frame like she was a child playing dress-up in someone else's clothes. Like she was pretending to be a functional adult who had her life together. Hotel maid. Bottom rung of society's ladder. Invisible labor that kept the world running. Nobody's first choice. Nobody's dream job. African-American woman trying to survive in Seoul. She would never, ever stop being the outsider here. Never stop being marked as foreign. Never stop being watched with suspicious eyes. She'd come to Korea at 21 years old with dreams so big they barely fit in her head. Grand plans, money to send home to struggling family, real opportunity. A genuinely better life waiting just around the corner if she just worked hard enough and believed strongly enough. Now she was 27, still working multiple jobs, still desperately poor, still drowning in debt and despair. Her Korean language skills were absolutely perfect, completely fluent, no grammatical errors, native-level pronunciation. Didn't matter even slightly. The accent marked her immediately, identified her as other, made her permanently foreign in a country that valued ethnic homogeneity above almost everything else. The stares on the subway, the small cutting comments disguised as innocent questions, the doors that literally closed in her face, the job applications that went mysteriously unanswered, and Cree, oh God, Cree. Coming to Seoul had systematically destroyed her baby sister's health. The terrible air quality, the pollution levels that violated international standards, the constant stress. Her asthma had gotten exponentially, catastrophically worse. What had started as manageable childhood asthma with an occasional inhaler had become a life-threatening condition, requiring constant medication and emergency room visits. Zaid had brought Cree to Seoul at 19 years old, making grand promises about better opportunities, a brighter future, real chances at success, education, healthcare, everything they couldn't access back home. Instead, she was slowly, systematically killing her little sister. "Zaid?" Cree's voice came out rough and painful, like gravel scraping against raw flesh. She was sitting up now on her mat, coughing that horrible wet cough that meant fluid was building up in her damaged lungs again. Always coughing, never stopping. "Did you eat anything?" Same question. Every single morning without fail. Cree always worried about her first, despite being the sick one, despite barely being able to breathe. "I'll grab something at work." The lie came out smooth and automatic now, well-practiced, almost believable. "Zaid, you can't keep doing this to yourself. I'm completely fine. Really, your inhaler prescription comes in today. That's what actually matters right now. That's the only thing that matters." Cree's face showed she understood the lie perfectly, saw right through it, but she was too weak to push the argument, too exhausted to fight. She just looked at Zaid with those big, worried eyes that made guilt twist like a physical knife in her chest. Zaid knelt down beside her sister's sleeping mat, took Cree's small hand in both of hers, squeezed gently. "I'll take care of you," she said with all the conviction she could muster. "Always, no matter what happens. I promise you that. I'll always take care of you." The imperial soul sat in the heart of Gangnam, like a gleaming monument to wealth Zaid would never possess. Sleek modern architecture, marble everything, gold fixtures, expensive art on every wall, everything Zaid wasn't and would never be. Mrs. Sung was already waiting by the staff room entrance like she'd been standing there for hours specifically to catch someone making a mistake. Her face looked like it had been carved from stone, cold, hard, completely devoid of warmth or human compassion. "Rivers, my office, right now." No greeting, no good morning, just immediate command. Zaid's stomach dropped straight through the floor. Her heart started pounding. Mrs. Sung closed the office door with an ominous click that sounded like a prison cell locking, pulled out a thick manila folder from her desk drawer. Zaid's employment file, already way too full of documentation for someone who'd only worked here 6 months. 2 official written warnings already on your permanent record. Mrs. Sung's voice was crisp and professional and absolutely freezing. 1 warning for taking an unauthorized sick day when your sister was hospitalized with a severe asthma attack. Another warning for being late 3 separate times in 2 weeks because of public transportation delays that were completely outside your control. "Ma'am, I can explain both of those situations if you'll just—" "I'm not interested in explanations. Rivers." The words cut through Zaid's attempt like a blade through paper. "I'm telling you the concrete reality of your employment situation. 1 more mistake, 1 more complaint from any guest about anything, 1 more single thing that goes wrong and you're immediately terminated. No discussion, no second chances, no appeals process. Do you understand me clearly?" "Yes, ma'am." "Completely. You're already easily replaceable, Rivers. Extremely replaceable. There are literally 100 women who would take your exact position tomorrow morning. Don't force me to actually replace you." Zaid left the office on legs that trembled so badly she had to lean against the hallway wall for support. Grabbed her cleaning cart with hands that shook uncontrollably. Tried desperately not to cry where any of her coworkers or supervisors could see her breaking down. An older Korean woman cleaning nearby noticed Zaid's distress, came over and gently touched her arm. Real kindness in her weathered, lined face, sympathy. "She's always significantly harder on you because of—" The woman gestured delicately at her own face, at her skin tone, not saying the word directly but meaning it completely, not wanting to speak racism out loud. "I know exactly why." Zaid's voice came out flat, dead, emotionless. "But I can't afford to care about the reasons. I just desperately need to keep this job. That's all that matters." 24 brutal hours. That's the shift length Zaid pulled. Day cleaning starting at 6 a.m., then overtime when other staff called in sick. Then more overtime because the hotel was hosting some big conference. No breaks allowed, no meals provided. She needed every single dollar she could possibly earn. By hour 20, she was literally seeing double, 2 of everything. Desperately hungry, dizzy, lightheaded, her body actively, loudly protesting the continued abuse. Mrs. Sung walked past Zaid's cleaning station, sharp eyes taking in every detail. "Pick up the pace significantly, Rivers, or go home right now without any pay whatsoever." So Zaid pushed even harder. Cleaned rooms faster than hotel policy recommended. Scrubbed floors on her knees until they were raw and bleeding through her uniform pants. Hauled trash bags down service corridors, bags that weighed almost as much as she currently did given her weight loss from skipping meals. Hour 24 finally hit like a physical blow to her exhausted body. Complete zombie mode activated. Pure mechanical autopilot. Survival instinct was literally the only thing keeping her body moving at this point. A new assignment notification pinged on her staff tablet. 12th floor, VIP level, where the truly wealthy guests stayed. Where rooms cost more per night than Zaid made in a month. Room 1205. Standard turnover procedure. Fresh towels from the linen closet. Clean sheets with hospital corners. Restock the minibar with imported Swiss chocolates and tiny bottles of Japanese whiskey that cost more than her weekly food budget. Simple, straightforward, easy, almost done with this nightmare shift. She just had to physically make it up there without literally collapsing unconscious in the service elevator. You know what's interesting? Zaid's about to walk through a door that will change her entire life, and she has no idea. Just like some of you reading this have no idea that subscribing to Black Hope Tales right now will change your experience completely. You'll get every twist, every moment when Jin-Ro breaks his 17-year vow. But if you skip subscribing, you'll be like Zaid, exhausted, alone, missing the signs that something bigger is coming. Don't be that person. Hit subscribe. And if you're still not convinced, comment below and tell me what it would take. What do I need to show you to prove this story is worth your time? Also, quick question for the community. Have any of you ever worked in hospitality like Zaid? Ever felt that bone-deep exhaustion she's feeling? Drop your country and your story in the comments. Let's build something here. The hallway lights on the 12th floor blinked on and off erratically like dying fireflies. Flickering fluorescence. Maintenance never fixed anything in the staff areas. Only the guest-facing sections ever got prompt attention. The brass room numbers ahead were genuinely difficult to read in the inconsistent lighting. Zaid squinted hard through her exhaustion-blurred, unfocused vision. The middle number on the door she was approaching was completely missing, burned out entirely, or maybe deliberately scratched off by some angry guest. Just a dark, empty space where a digit should be clearly visible. It looked like maybe 1205. Could be 1205. Probably 1205. Had to be 1205. Right? That was her assignment. She was way too exhausted to walk all the way back to the service desk and double-check with the front desk staff. Too terrified of Mrs. Sung's inevitable reaction if she showed any sign of incompetence or uncertainty. That would be seen as weakness, as inability to do her basic job. "It's 12:05, Zaid whispered to herself like a desperate prayer, like saying it out loud would make it true. "It has to be 12:05. That's what the assignment says." Her cartwheel immediately caught on a raised section of hallway carpeting. The Imperial Soul had absolutely perfect, flawless carpeting in all the guest areas. In the service corridors where guests never looked, not so much. Worn and uneven and dangerous. She shoved the stubborn cart harder, put her entire depleted body weight behind it. The cart suddenly lurched violently, bucked sideways like a frightened horse, then shot forward completely out of her control like it had been launched from some medieval siege weapon. It slammed into the door with a tremendous bang that echoed down the silent hallway like thunder. The door swung open wide on well-oiled hinges. Dense steam poured out immediately in thick clouds. The overwhelming scent of soap so ridiculously, absurdly expensive, it probably had an Italian name and cost more than her monthly rent hit her like a physical wall. Rich sandalwood, cedar, bergamot. Something dark and masculine and completely, utterly foreign to her world. Her rebellious cart rolled inside the room before she could regain any control. She stumbled after it desperately, frantically grabbing for the handle to stop the forward momentum before she crashed directly into expensive furniture or priceless art. Then she looked up and saw him standing there. And everything changed. Jin-Ro stood perfectly still in the doorway between his marble bathroom and silk-sheeted bedroom, shirtless and still dripping. Water everywhere. Elaborate ink covering his skin like living, moving art. Traditional Korean dragons breathing fire, geometric patterns in perfect symmetry, tigers mid-leap, cherry blossoms falling, stories written in black and gray across every single visible inch of his powerful body. He looked maybe early 40s, but his face seemed younger somehow. Sharp, aristocratic features, high cheekbones, strong jaw, cold eyes that seemed to look directly through skin and muscle and bone to see everything hidden underneath. The kind of dangerous, lethal beautiful that came with severe warning labels. Time just completely stopped. Zaid couldn't move a single muscle. Fear had locked every joint in her body, frozen her completely. But there was something else present too. Something she absolutely, desperately did not want to acknowledge or name or think about. He stared directly at her with an unreadable expression. Something flickered briefly behind the ice in his dark eyes. Surprise, maybe. Confusion. Like he genuinely hadn't been expecting any interruption to his evening. Like she'd accidentally broken some unspoken sacred rule just by existing in his private space. Two large men in expensive, tailored suits suddenly crashed violently through the door behind her. Security personnel, moving with trained efficiency. Professional, dangerous, hands already reaching for her with clear intent. "Sir, we have an unauthorized intruder in your private suite." One guard grabbed Zaid's arm roughly, his grip immediately painful, bruising. His other hand was already reaching for the radio on his belt to call for backup and police. Jinro raised a single hand, one simple gesture, nothing more dramatic than that. "Let her go immediately." The guard froze mid-motion like he'd been turned to stone, genuinely confused. His training clearly, explicitly said to remove all threats to his principal with maximum efficiency, but his boss was giving completely contradictory orders that made no logical sense. "Sir, protocol clearly states—" "I said let her go, now!" The words came out like frozen steel, absolute, final, no room whatsoever for discussion or debate or questioning. The guard released Zaid instantly, stepped back quickly like he'd accidentally touched something burning hot. "Out, both of you. Leave us." They exited without a single additional word. No questions asked, no hesitation whatsoever. Just turned professionally and walked out in synchronized silence, closing the heavy door behind them with a quiet, ominous click. Now it was just the two of them, Maid and Monster, alone together. The silence stretched out seemingly forever, heavy and loaded and suffocating. He studied her with those cold, calculating, predatory eyes, taking in absolutely every detail, reading her like a book. She trembled uncontrollably but somehow forced herself to maintain direct eye contact. Survival instinct. Primal rule. Never, ever show weakness to apex predators. "What's your name?" The question came out surprisingly quiet, almost gentle, completely unexpected. "Zaid." She could barely force air through her constricted throat. "Zaid Rivers." "American?" She managed a jerky nod, not trusting her voice to work properly. "How long have you been living in Korea?" 7 years total." Her voice came out as barely a whisper. His dark eyes moved over her slowly, methodically, clinically, seeing things she desperately wished she could hide. The way her entire body shook uncontrollably. Her hollow, sunken cheeks from countless missed meals. How she swayed slightly on unsteady feet from a dangerous combination of exhaustion and malnutrition. "When did you last eat a proper meal?" The question caught her completely, utterly off guard. Not remotely what she'd expected him to ask. Not what made any logical sense in this situation. This morning. I ate breakfast this morning." The practiced lie came out automatically, smooth from countless repetitions. He saw straight through the obvious deception immediately. She watched understanding and something else, concern maybe, register clearly in his face. "Sit down in that chair before you physically collapse." Not asking politely, not making a suggestion, commanding. Authority voice that expected immediate obedience. Her trembling legs simply gave out completely. She practically collapsed into the nearest chair. Expensive leather upholstery. Italian, probably. The chair alone probably cost more than everything Zaid owned in the world combined. He picked up his phone from a side table, spoke rapid, fluent Korean. gave what sounded like detailed orders, hung up after maybe 30 seconds. "Food will arrive in approximately 10 minutes. Sir, I really should leave immediately. I have multiple other rooms to clean on my assignment list. You're not going anywhere at all until you've eaten something substantial." Why? The desperate question escaped before she could stop it, before her brain could override her mouth. Why would you possibly care? Something in his hard expression softened visibly. Just barely. Just for a brief moment. Because I've seen that exact look before. That specific expression. Someone who's completely forgotten their own desperate hunger because they're too busy trying to keep someone else alive. Her eyes immediately burned with unexpected, unwanted tears. My baby sister. She needs expensive medication I can't afford. I was just trying to... I know. I understand. How did he know? How could he possibly know anything about her situation? 10 minutes later, exactly 10 minutes, perfectly timed, food arrived on a room service cart, loaded with more food than 2 people could reasonably eat, maybe more than 5 people could eat. Traditional Korean dishes that looked expensive. Western options that looked even more expensive. Everything perfect and beautiful and completely wasted on her. Eat, now. Pride said absolutely not. Said she didn't need anyone's charity. Said she could take care of herself perfectly fine. Desperate, consuming hunger said shut up immediately and eat the food before you literally pass out on his expensive carpet. Hunger won the argument decisively and completely. She ate fast at first, desperately, almost violently, shoveling food into her mouth like she'd forgotten what eating felt like her body didn't remember how to process nutrition. Then, gradually, slowly, slower as her brain started actually functioning again, as basic awareness and human consciousness gradually returned. He watched her the entire time with those dark, unreadable eyes. Didn't touch any of the food himself. Didn't eat a single bite. Just observed her intently with that calculating expression. Between desperate bites, Zaid stole quick glances at him. Really looked at him for the first time. The elaborate tattoos covering his skin like protective armor, the faint scars cleverly hidden between sections of ink. The coldness in his eyes that occasionally, briefly flickered with something that looked almost human. You're currently wondering if I'm planning to hurt you. Brutally honest response. Yes, absolutely yes. I'm not. You crashed through the wrong door by accident, but you're clearly not my enemy. Then what am I to you? Long pause. Meaningful silence. I genuinely don't know yet. She finished eating. The first full, complete meal she'd had in multiple days. Her stomach actually hurt from the sudden abundance. The shock of real food. She stood up carefully on shaky, unsteady legs. Thank you for your kindness. I'll leave now. She grabbed her cart with both hands, made it all the way across his enormous suite to the door, put her hand on the cold metal handle. Zaid? She turned around slowly to face him again. His expression had shifted noticeably. Something unexpectedly vulnerable crossed his hard face for just a second. What room number were you actually supposed to clean tonight? 1205. That was my assignment. This suite is 1208. The burned out, missing number. The terrible mistake that changed absolutely everything. Perfect understanding crashed over her in devastating waves. Maybe it wasn't really a mistake at all. What do you mean by that? Maybe you were actually supposed to end up here, in this room, at this exact moment. Maybe fate brought you through my door. The air between them suddenly felt impossibly electric, charged, dangerous, crackling with potential energy. She left fast, almost running, nearly sprinting down the hallway. Out in the corridor, she leaned heavily against the wall for support, trying desperately to catch her breath, trying to force her racing heart to slow down, trying to process what just happened. Who was that terrifying man? Why was she still alive? Why had he fed her instead of having her immediately fired? Or arrested? Or worse? She somehow finished her shift like a wandering ghost, went through all the mechanical motions on pure autopilot, went home hours later carrying takeout containers he'd absolutely insisted she take with her. Leftovers that would feed both her and Cree for at least 2 full days. Cree asked normal, concerned sister questions about her shift. Zaid lied smoothly, practiced deception. How could she possibly begin to explain what just happened? Meanwhile, in the penthouse suite high above Seoul, Jinro stood alone at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city's infinite lights spread out below him like fallen stars across black velvet. His head of security entered the room quietly, professional, respectful. "Sir, should we conduct a full investigation into the woman?" Very long pause, long enough to become meaningful and uncomfortable. "Yes, absolutely, but proceed very carefully, extremely carefully. Under no circumstances should she know she's being actively watched. And if our investigation reveals she's some kind of threat to you or the organization?" "She's not a threat." The complete certainty in his voice surprised even him. "She's..." He stopped mid-sentence. Couldn't finish. Didn't know how to finish. "Sir?" "Nothing important. Just watch her closely. Make absolutely certain she stays safe. That's your primary objective now." After the security chief left, Ro stood completely alone in the darkness, touched his chest directly over his heart, the heart that was beating faster than it had in 17 long years. 17 years of perfect control, 17 years of frozen isolation, 17 years of ice. He pulled up the security footage on his tablet with trembling fingers, watched her stumble into his room again, rewound it, watched again, and again, and again. The pure terror in her dark eyes, the fierce pride that somehow kept her standing upright despite her obvious fear. The way she didn't beg or cry or try to manipulate her way out of trouble, just stood there, honest, human, real. "What have you done to me?" he whispered to the empty room, to no one, to ghosts. Across the street, in a dark building with blacked-out windows, dangerous men with expensive cameras sat hunched in front of multiple computer screens showing surveillance feeds, clear photographs of Zaid leaving Jinro's private suite, multiple angles, takeout containers visible in her hands, precise timestamps showing she'd been inside his room for over an hour. Detailed documentation. Confirmed. Jinro had a woman inside his private personal suite. The operative's voice carried barely contained excitement. She remained inside for over an hour according to timestamps. First woman allowed in his private space in 17 years. The team leader leaned forward eagerly, smiled. "Yes, sir. Completely confirmed. Verified through multiple sources." The team leader's smile widened. Cold, calculating, predatory. "Then we've just found our perfect weapon. Our way in. Find out absolutely everything about this woman. Everything. I want to know what she eats for breakfast." The next morning arrived too soon and felt all wrong. Zaid showed up at the Imperial Seoul with one desperate goal: erase yesterday from her mind completely, pretend it never happened, pretend she hadn't stumbled into a dangerous man's private suite, pretend he hadn't fed her, pretend she hadn't seen something human flickering behind those cold eyes. Just another normal shift, just another day of invisible labor. But the universe, or fate, or whatever cruel force was orchestrating her life, had different plans. Mrs. Sung spotted her before Zaid could even reach her cleaning cart, waved her over with that sharp, impatient gesture that never meant anything good. "Rivers, new assignment for you." Zaid's stomach immediately tightened into knots. "Ma'am, you're being permanently transferred to the 12th floor, VIP suites exclusively, starting today, effective immediately." The panic hit fast and cold, flooding through her veins like ice water. "But I didn't request a transfer." Mrs. Sung cut her off with a look that could freeze fire. "You didn't request it. Someone else did. Someone very important and very influential specifically requested you for that floor." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Don't ask questions. Don't make trouble. Just be grateful you still have a job at all." Zaid knew immediately, knew with absolute certainty who had made that call. Jin-ro. She opened her mouth to argue, to explain why this was a terrible idea. Why being that close to him every single day was dangerous for reasons she couldn't articulate. But Mrs. Sung had already turned away with crisp efficiency. Conversation over, decision final, no appeals accepted, trapped, completely trapped. Zaid couldn't refuse the assignment without explaining why, and she couldn't explain why without admitting she'd crashed into a guest's private suite uninvited, seen him half-naked and vulnerable, eaten his food like a starving animal, talked to him like an equal instead of treating him with the deference his position demanded. She grabbed her cart with trembling hands and headed toward the elevator, her entire body shaking with a mixture of fear and something else she refused to name. She started with suite 1206, deliberately avoiding 1208 like the room itself might reach out and pull her in. The suite was empty. Guests checked out early that morning according to her tablet. Standard deep clean required before the next arrival. Zaid worked methodically, stripping beds, replacing linens, scrubbing bathroom fixtures until they gleamed. The familiar routine usually calmed her racing thoughts, usually gave her mind something concrete to focus on. Not today. While vacuuming under the mahogany nightstand, something caught her peripheral vision. A picture frame shoved way back into the dust and shadows. Forgotten, abandoned, hidden. Zaid pulled it out carefully, her fingers leaving clean trails through the thick layer of dust coating the glass. She wiped the surface clean with her sleeve, and found herself staring at a woman's face. Korean, late 20s maybe, the kind of genuinely, naturally beautiful that didn't need makeup or filters or perfect lighting, just bone structure and warmth and life radiating from her dark eyes. She was smiling at the camera with such open joy, such pure happiness, like she still believed the world was fundamentally good, like she still believed good things happened to good people. Something about the photograph felt unbearably heavy in Zaid's hands, sad, weighted with grief, like it carried the accumulated sorrow of years compressed into a single frozen moment. She couldn't explain why, but looking at that woman's face made her chest ache. Zaid took the frame downstairs to the front desk on her break, held it out to the young clerk on duty. "Found this in suite 1206. Must have been left behind by a previous guest. Should probably go to the lost and found." The desk clerk's face went completely, utterly white. Actually drained of all color like blood evacuating from a wound. Her hands physically shook when she reached for the frame. Nearly dropped it. Had to grab it with both hands to maintain her grip. That shouldn't be anywhere." The words came out as barely a whisper. Where did you find this?" "Under the nightstand. Pushed way back." "Why? Who is she?" The clerk looked around nervously, making absolutely certain nobody else could overhear this conversation. Then she leaned forward across the desk and spoke in a voice so quiet, Zaid had to strain to hear it. "You really don't know? You have no idea who that is?" "Should I?" "That's Sora, Jin-ro's wife." Zaid's breath caught in her throat, stopped completely. "His wife?" "She died 17 years ago." The clerk swallowed hard, her voice dropped even lower. "Murdered. Right here in this hotel, in the service corridor on the 12th floor. He hasn't—" She paused, collected herself. "Nobody, since then. Not once. Not in 17 years. No women. No relationships. No one. The information hit Zaid like a physical blow. 17 years. The same number he'd mentioned, the same impossible time frame. She walked away from the front desk in a daze, made it halfway back to the elevator before her legs started shaking so badly she had to lean against the wall for support. 17 years ago, right here, in this hotel. 17 years ago, Jin-Ro was a different man entirely. 27 years old, still young enough to believe in redemption, still human enough to feel hope, still soft enough in certain places to believe love could exist even in his violent world. Sora was 26, a complete civilian living a completely normal life. Her father had made one catastrophic mistake, borrowing money from Ro's organization and then being unable to pay it back when the debt came due. Jin-Ro showed up at their modest house in Gangnam to collect. Standard procedure. Business as usual. Another day, another debt to settle. Sora answered the door and did something absolutely nobody had done in years. She stood up to him, looked him straight in those cold, dangerous eyes, didn't back down, didn't cry or beg or try to manipulate him, didn't offer herself as payment like so many desperate daughters had done before, just stood there in the doorway with her chin up and her spine straight and told him her father was a good man who'd made a mistake out of desperation, not malice. Brave, maybe stupid, probably both, but completely, utterly real in a way Jin-Ro hadn't encountered in years. He should have walked away, should have sent his men to collect later, should have written off the debt and moved on to easier targets. Instead, he came back the next day, and the day after that. They fell into something neither of them planned or expected or knew how to handle. 2 years of secret meetings in hidden places, coffee shops in neighborhoods where nobody knew his face, walks along the Han River at dawn when the city was still sleeping, late-night phone calls that lasted until sunrise. Dangerous. Forbidden. The absolute worst idea either of them had ever had. But real. God, so painfully real. The kind of love that shouldn't survive in his world but somehow did anyway. Against all logic. Against all odds. Against every rule written and unwritten in his father's organization. They made plans to disappear together, started small, fantasizing, then planning seriously, then actually preparing. New country, new identities, new life where his past couldn't follow and her family wouldn't be in danger. Leave all the violence and blood and death behind. Start over completely. Be normal people living normal lives. Jin-Ro trusted Park to arrange everything. Park was his second in command, his childhood friend, the one person in the entire violent, treacherous world Ro thought he could count on without question. Park would handle the escape routes, the safe houses, the forged documents, the new identities. Everything. The night before they were supposed to vanish forever, Sora and Ro stayed awake until dawn in his apartment, sitting on the floor with their backs against the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, talking, planning, dreaming out loud about a future that felt almost possible. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Sora asked, her fingers laced through his. "You're walking away from everything. Your father's entire organization, your inheritance, your power, everything you've ever known." "I'm certain about you," Ro said simply, like it was the easiest truth he'd ever spoken. "That's all that matters. That's the only thing that matters. But your father's legacy can die with him." The words came out hard, final. "I don't want his legacy. I want a life that's actually mine, ours, not his, not the organization's, just ours." They talked about the future like it was real, like it was inevitable, like it was already happening, maybe having children someday, a little girl with Sora's smile, A boy with Ro's determination. A house somewhere quiet and peaceful, maybe near the ocean, maybe in the mountains, somewhere far from Seoul's violence. Actual peace. Real peace. The kind of peace that didn't come at the end of a gun or through intimidation or violence. The kind of peace that came from being safe, being loved, being home. The next evening, everything exploded in the worst possible way. The plan was simple, elegant, foolproof. Meet in the service hallway on the 12th floor of the Imperial Seoul. One final checkpoint, one last moment of confirmation that they were really doing this. Then disappear into carefully arranged transportation that would take them to the airport. Then gone. Forever. Sora arrived first, exactly on time like always. One small suitcase containing everything she was willing to leave behind. Everything she needed to start completely over. She waited in that corridor, checked her watch. Nervous energy making her shift from foot to foot. But excited too, hopeful. Believing that in 30 minutes her new life would begin. Ro got delayed by urgent business. Looking back later, much later, when grief had transformed into clarity, it was so obviously Park's manipulation, so clearly a setup. But in the moment, Ro didn't see it, didn't question it, just trusted his oldest friend and rushed to handle one last crisis before leaving forever. Sora waited alone in that hallway, heard footsteps echoing, getting closer, getting louder. Turned around with a smile already forming on her face, expected to see Ro. Instead, armed men. 5 of them. Kim Family Syndicate. Rival organization. Park had sold them out completely, given them the exact time and exact location in exchange for a promised position of power in their organization. Sora's smile died. Understanding crashed over her in the single second before everything went wrong. She ran, turned, and sprinted down the corridor. But there was nowhere to go in a hotel hallway. Just walls and locked doors and dead ends. Gunfire echoed like thunder in the enclosed space. 3 shots, then 4. Then she went down hard, slammed into the floor, blood pooling beneath her immediately. Jin-Ro heard the shots from the stairwell 2 floors down, came running, sprinting, taking stairs 3 at a time. Too late. Always too late. He burst through the stairwell door and found her lying in a spreading pool of blood, eyes wide and terrified and still conscious, still trying to breathe through punctured lungs. He dropped to his knees so hard he bruised bone, pulled her into his arms desperately, tried to stop the bleeding with his bare hands even though he knew with absolute certainty that it was already too late. No. Stay with me, Sora. Please just stay with me. Please don't leave me. Blood bubbled on her lips when she tried to speak. Her voice came out as barely a whisper, barely breath. You came. Don't talk. Please don't talk. Save your strength. I'm getting help right now. You're going to be fine. You have to be fine. Park. The name came out choked, broken, using the last of her fading strength. Park told them where. The betrayal revealed in her dying breath, the truth in her last words. I'll kill him, Ro said, his voice breaking completely, shattering. I'll kill all of them, every single one, I promise you. Sora lifted one shaking hand with enormous effort, touched his face gently. One last touch, one final moment of connection. Don't become what they are. Then her hand fell, just dropped like someone had cut the strings holding it up. Jin-Ro held her body and screamed, a sound of pure animal anguish that echoed down the hallways. That brought hotel security running. That would haunt the nightmares of everyone who heard it. They found him hours later, still sitting there in congealing blood, still holding her, still whispering apologies to a woman who could no longer hear them. Blood soaked his hands, his clothes, his soul. Let's stop right here for a second. You just read about the most devastating moment in Jin-ro's life, the moment that destroyed him completely, the moment that turned him into the ghost he is today. And now you understand exactly why Zaid walking into his life is either going to save him or destroy them both. But here's what's killing me. Some of you are reading this entire tragic backstory, feeling every emotion, completely invested in whether these two broken people can heal each other, and you still haven't subscribed to Black Hope Tales. So I'm asking you directly, why are you risking missing the rest of this story? Subscribe right now, or drop a comment and tell me honestly what's holding you back. And for everyone who is here for this journey, comment where you're watching from and tell me, do you think Jin-ro can heal from this? Or is he too broken? 3 days later, after a funeral attended only by Ro and a handful of trusted men who knew to keep their mouths shut, he knelt alone at Sora's grave, completely hollow inside. Everything that made him human had been scraped out and discarded. All that remained was rage and guilt and an emptiness so profound it felt like drowning on dry land. Park was already dead by then. Ro had hunted him down personally within hours, found him celebrating his new position, his successful betrayal. Killed him slowly and brutally in ways specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. Made it last. Made him beg. Made him scream. Made him understand exactly what he'd destroyed. But it didn't bring her back. Didn't fix anything. Didn't fill the emptiness. Just added more blood to hands already stained permanently red. Ro spoke to Sora's headstone like she could still somehow hear him, like maybe the dead listened from wherever they went. I failed you. I trusted the wrong person and you paid for it with your life. I won't make that mistake again. Ever. Nobody gets close. Nobody else dies because I cared about them. I'm sorry, Sora. God, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. He stood up slowly, stiffly, like he'd aged decades in 3 days. Walked away from that cemetery. The man who left was fundamentally, completely different. Colder. Harder. Sealed off from human connection like a vault locked from the inside. Jin-ro. The legend, the ghost, the man who felt nothing. 17 years followed, 17 years of perfect isolation. No women, no emotional connections whatsoever, no vulnerability, no softness, no love. Just business transactions and blood and survival. Just ice where warmth used to be. Back in the present moment, Zaid stood frozen in the hotel corridor, her cleaning cart abandoned and forgotten beside her. Understanding crashed over her in devastating waves, each realization hitting harder than the last. Jin-ro had lost the woman he loved in a hotel hallway. Not just lost. Watched her die. Held her while she bled out. Heard her last words. Felt her last breath. He'd been trapped in that exact moment for 17 years, living in it, dying in it, unable to move forward, unable to let go, unable to be anything except the ghost of the man he used to be. And yesterday, just yesterday, she'd stumbled randomly into his room. The way he'd looked at her suddenly made terrible, perfect, horrible sense, like seeing a ghost walk through his door, like the past colliding with the present. Like hope was a knife blade and it hurt too much to touch. When did you last eat? Maybe Sora had been the kind of person who forgot to take care of herself too. Maybe she'd sacrificed everything for the people she loved. Maybe he saw that self-destructive pattern repeating, feeding Zaid, watching her eat with those intense, unreadable eyes, making absolutely certain she finished every bite. Maybe he was trying to save someone this time. Do it right. Not fail again. Change the pattern. Break the cycle. prevent history from repeating its cruelest lessons. "Oh God," Zaid whispered to the empty hallway, to the walls that had witnessed Sora's death. "I'm not a threat to him. I'm a trigger. I'm a reminder. I'm everything he's been running from for 17 years. End of her shift. The sun had set hours ago. Seoul's lights glittered through the windows. Zaid was finishing her last assignment, deliberately moving slowly, deliberately staying as far from Suite 1208 as physically possible, while still technically doing her job. A soft knock came from behind her. She turned around slowly, already knowing, already certain. Jin-ro stood in his doorway like he'd been waiting there for hours. Watching. Patient. Inevitable. He was dressed casually, no suit, just dark jeans and a simple shirt, looking almost normal, almost approachable, almost like a regular person instead of Seoul's most dangerous man. "We need to talk," he said quietly, carefully, like he was afraid she'd bolt. "Sir, I really don't think that's... Please." That single word stopped her cold. So unexpected, so vulnerable, so completely wrong coming from a man like him. Men like Jin-ro didn't say please, didn't ask, didn't request. They commanded and expected obedience. But he was asking. Actually asking. Against every survival instinct screaming at her to run as fast and far as possible, Zaid found herself nodding. "Okay." Inside his suite, he'd prepared tea. Not just any tea. Traditional green tea. The full ceremonial kind with proper cups and precise pouring techniques and careful attention to temperature and timing. Everything arranged beautifully on a low wooden table positioned between two silk cushions. The amount of effort and care he'd clearly put into this preparation caught Zaid completely off guard. This wasn't something you threw together in 5 minutes. This took time. Attention. Planning. He'd been preparing for this conversation. Knew she'd say yes. Or hoped she would. They sat on opposite sides of the table, maintaining careful physical distance, creating space that felt both necessary and somehow wrong. The silence stretched between them like a physical thing, heavy, loaded with meaning, weighted with all the things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Zaid broke it. Couldn't take the tension anymore. "I know about Sora. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss." His entire body went rigid instantly, every muscle tensing, every line of his face hardening. "Who told you?" "Nobody told me directly. I found her photograph shoved behind furniture in one of the suites. When I returned it to the front desk, the clerk explained who she was." "Then you understand now." His voice came out tight and controlled and barely holding together. "Why I can't. Why I shouldn't." "Shouldn't what? Show basic human kindness to some random hotel maid who crashed into your room? Why I can't let you matter." The raw, brutal honesty of it hit like a physical punch. No deflection, no careful corporate speak, just the truth laid bare. "I don't want to matter to you," Zaid said, and meant every word. "I just want to do my job. Take care of my sister. Stay invisible, stay safe. That's literally all I want from life right now." Jin-ro looked at her across the tea service he'd so carefully, painstakingly prepared. His dark eyes held something she couldn't quite read. Sadness, maybe. Or resignation. Or both. "Too late," he said softly, almost sadly. "You're not invisible to me anymore." Day 3 after the collision started exactly the same way Day 2 had ended, with Jin-ro completely unable to stop thinking about her, unable to focus on business, unable to concentrate on the various crises demanding his attention, unable to do anything except think about a woman in a pink and white uniform who'd stumbled into his life by accident. Or maybe not by accident. Maybe fate, maybe destiny, maybe the universe's cruel sense of humor. He sat in his private office on the top floor of the Imperial Seoul, surrounded by monitors showing real-time security feeds from every corner of the hotel. Dozens of screens, hundreds of cameras, his empire reduced to flickering digital images. And on one particular screen, there she was, Zaid Rivers, pushing her cleaning cart down the 12th floor hallway, moving methodically from room to room, professional, efficient, completely, utterly exhausted. He told himself he was monitoring a potential security threat, assessing risk levels, making sure she wasn't working for a rival organization. Standard protective protocol. That's what he told his head of security when the man walked into the office and found his boss still staring at the same screen 3 hours later, not doing paperwork, not handling business, just watching. But that wasn't the truth. The truth Jin-Ro barely admitted to himself, was that he noticed everything about her. Absolutely everything. The way she limped slightly on her left foot around 11 a.m., favoring her right side, worn-out shoes with holes in the soles that she couldn't afford to replace. He could see the limp getting worse as the hours progressed. How her hands started shaking around 2 p.m., trembling when she gripped the cart handle. Low blood sugar. She'd skipped lunch. Again. Probably skipped breakfast, too. Running on nothing but water and desperation. The way she checked her phone obsessively. Every 10 minutes. Sometimes more frequently. Worried about her sister. Always worried. The anxiety visible even through the grainy security footage. And the thing that made his chest physically tight, when she thought nobody was looking, when she believed she was completely alone, she'd eat leftover food from the room service trays she was clearing. Half a sandwich someone left behind. Cold French fries. Pieces of fruit starting to brown. Scraps. She'd look around first. Quick, furtive glances, making absolutely sure no supervisors or co-workers could see. Then she'd eat fast. Guilty. Ashamed. Like she was committing some terrible crime instead of just trying not to starve. "Sir." His head of security cleared his throat loudly, deliberately. "You've been watching that particular screen for 3 hours now." Ro didn't look away from the monitor. Couldn't. Assessing threat level. "She's a hotel maid." "Sir, she's more than that." The security chief waited for further explanation, for clarification, for something that made sense. Ro didn't have anything to give him, at least not anything he could say out loud. "Run a complete background check on her," Ro finally said. "Everything you can possibly find. Employment history, financial records, family connections. Everything." "Sir." "Everything. I want that report on my desk by tomorrow morning." The next morning, a thick manila folder landed on Ro's desk with a heavy thud that echoed through his office. He opened it slowly. Started reading. Couldn't stop. Zaid Rivers. 27 years old. American citizen. Born in Detroit, Michigan. Came to Seoul at 21 on a hospitality industry work visa. Sister, Cree Rivers. 21 years old. Diagnosed with severe asthma at age 12. Condition worsened significantly after moving to Seoul. Air quality issues making chronic illness exponentially worse. Current financial status, $347,000 in debt. That translated to about 260 American dollars. Not much in the grand scheme of things. Devastating for someone earning minimum wage. Rent was 2 weeks overdue. Landlord had already filed preliminary eviction papers. Employment history told the complete story in stark bureaucratic detail. 5 different hotels in 7 years total. Never stayed anywhere long. Never built stability. Never climbed the ladder. 2 jobs she'd been fired from. One for taking too many sick days when Cree was hospitalized with a severe asthma attack. Another for being late too often because she was working a second job at night to earn extra money. 3 jobs where she'd been laid off when hotels downsized their housekeeping staff. Last hired, first fired. Always expendable. Nobody wanted to keep her. Nobody invested in training her. Nobody gave her a chance to prove herself. The medical records hit hardest. Cree's treatments cost $400,000 per month. $400,000 won for inhalers and medications and emergency interventions. The file included copies of Zaid's bank statements for the past 6 months. The pattern was devastatingly clear, crystal clear, impossible to miss. She'd been systematically skipping meals to afford her sister's medication, regularly, deliberately, starving herself so Cree could breathe. No family in Korea, no support system whatsoever. No safety net to catch them when they fell. Just 2 women alone in a foreign country, drowning slowly, waiting for the inevitable moment when desperation became catastrophe. Roe's hand tightened on the papers until they crumpled, until his knuckles went white, until the edges tore. Her entire desperate, terrifying life reduced to a bureaucratic file, numbers and dates and cold facts that didn't capture what he'd seen in her eyes that first night. The fear, the pride, the fierce determination to survive. The love that made her sacrifice everything without hesitation. Everything she had went to her sister. Nothing left for herself. No space for her own needs or wants or survival. He recognized that kind of love instantly, intimately. The kind that consumed you completely. The kind that made you sacrifice everything without thinking twice, the kind that felt like drowning and flying simultaneously. He'd loved Sora that way once. Loved her enough to walk away from his entire life. Loved her enough to plan an escape. Loved her enough to risk everything. And it had killed her. Day 4 brought an accidental encounter in the hallway that felt anything but accidental. Zaid was cleaning outside Suite 1206, her cart positioned carefully, her movements efficient and practiced, lost in the mindless rhythm of work. Roe's door opened. He stepped out in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, on his way to an important meeting with the Busan faction, territory negotiations that required his personal attention. They both stopped moving instantly, frozen like someone had hit pause on the universe. She recovered first, bowed quickly, formally, perfect employee deference. "Good afternoon, sir." He wanted to say something real, ask how she was actually doing, if she'd eaten today, if her sister was breathing easier, if the money he'd left had helped. Instead, he just nodded stiffly and started walking toward the elevator, maintaining distance, keeping walls up, protecting them both from whatever this dangerous thing was growing between them. He made it exactly 5 steps before he stopped, turned around, gave up on pretending he could walk away. "Are you eating properly?" Zaid looked genuinely surprised by the question, caught off guard. "Yes, sir." Absolute lie. Complete lie. He could see it clearly in her face, in the way her eyes shifted slightly, in the defensive set of her shoulders. "The hotel provides staff meals in the break room. Use them." "I will. Thank you for your concern, sir." He walked away, felt her confused eyes on his back the entire way down the hall, knew she was trying to figure him out, trying to understand why Seoul's most dangerous man cared whether a random hotel maid ate lunch. He was confusing himself at this point, couldn't explain his own behavior, couldn't justify the concern, couldn't rationalize any of it. Later that same day, Zaid opened her staff locker to grab her jacket before heading home. An envelope sat on top of her neatly folded uniform, plain white, unsealed. She looked around quickly. Nobody else in the break room, nobody watching. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. Cash, neatly bundled. She counted it twice to make absolutely sure. $500,000. 500,000 won, exactly enough to cover Cree's medication for the month and their overdue rent combined. Down to the last bill, precisely calculated. No note, no explanation, no name attached. But she knew with absolute certainty who had left this. Jinro. Had to be. Nobody else knew her financial situation in that kind of precise detail. Pride flared hot and furious in her chest. She should march up to the 12th floor right now, storm into his suite, throw the money back at him, tell him she wasn't a charity case, tell him she didn't need his pity or his guilt or whatever complicated emotion was driving this. But reality was so much colder than pride. Cree needed her inhaler today. Today. Not next week. Not when Zaid's next paycheck came through. Today. And the landlord had stopped being polite about the overdue rent. His last text had mentioned lawyers, court proceedings, eviction timelines, accept help from a dangerous man she barely knew, or watch her sisters suffocate while they got thrown out onto the street. Some choices weren't really choices at all. Just the illusion of choice while circumstance held a gun to your head. Zaid folded the envelope and put it carefully in her pocket. Hated herself for it. Hated him for putting her in this position. Hated the entire universe for making survival require swallowing pride. Day 5 arrived. End of Zaid's shift. She was deliberately cleaning as far from Suite 1208 as physically possible while still technically being on the 12th floor. Avoiding him. Avoiding the confusion. Avoiding the guilt and the gratitude and the dangerous pull she felt every time she saw him. A door opened behind her. She heard it clearly, knew which door without looking. She turned slowly, reluctantly, already knowing what she'd see. Jinro stood in his doorway wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt. No suit, no business armor, no corporate facade, just a man, looking almost normal, almost human, almost approachable. "Do you have time for tea?" Every survival instinct Zaid possessed screamed at her to say no, to run, to maintain distance, to protect herself from whatever this was becoming. "Sir, I really should finish my shift." "Your shift ended 10 minutes ago." His voice was quieter than usual. Careful, almost tentative. "And this isn't an order. It's a request. You can say no." Something in his tone caught her completely off guard. He sounded vulnerable, almost nervous, like he was genuinely afraid she'd refuse. Against every piece of common sense she had left, against every warning bell going off in her head, Zaid heard herself say, "Okay." Inside his suite, he'd prepared a full traditional Korean tea service. Not just tea. The full elaborate ceremony. Small porcelain cups, precise water temperature, careful timing. Everything arranged beautifully on a low lacquered table positioned between 2 silk cushions. The amount of effort and attention he'd clearly put into this preparation was staggering. This wasn't casual. This was intentional, meaningful. They sat on opposite sides of the table, maintaining careful physical distance even though the space between them felt charged. Electric. The silence stretched between them, heavy, loaded with all the things neither of them knew how to say, all the questions that felt too dangerous to ask. Finally, Ro broke the silence. "Did you use the money I left?" Zaid's whole body went rigid, every muscle tensing. "That was you." Statement, not question. They both knew the answer. "Yes. I can't accept charity. It's not charity." He cut her off gently but firmly. "It's compensation." Compensation for what, exactly? For putting you in danger by showing you kindness. He poured tea with perfectly steady hands. Years of discipline and control. "My enemies watch me constantly, monitor everything I do, everyone I interact with. They saw you leave my suite that first day. Now you're on their radar, marked as potentially significant." Fear crawled up her spine like ice water, cold and paralyzing. What does that mean exactly? It means people might try to use you to hurt me, to get information, to create leverage. The money helps you protect yourself. And your sister. Understanding crashed over her in terrible waves. This is why you transferred me to this floor. You're not keeping me close to watch me. You're keeping me close to protect me. Yes. I didn't ask for your protection. Her voice came out sharper than she intended, anger and fear mixing into something combustible. Ro's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped. And I didn't ask for you to crash through my door and make me care whether you lived or died. But here we are, both of us trapped in a situation neither of us wanted. The admission hung in the air between them, raw, honest, dangerous. Make me care. Those 3 words. He cared. Actually cared. This wasn't just about guilt or obligation or protecting assets. He cared. Zaid reached for her teacup to have something to do with her shaking hands. Needed an action, a distraction, anything to process what he'd just said. Ro reached for the sugar container at the exact same moment. Their fingers touched, just for a second. Barely anything. The briefest contact, skin on skin. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. 17 years. 17 years since Jin-Ro had felt a woman's touch deliberately. 17 years of perfect isolation, perfect control. The sensation hit him like electricity, like lightning, overwhelming, terrifying, intoxicating, wrong and right simultaneously. He jerked his hand back like he'd touched open flame, knocked his teacup over in the process. Hot tea spilled across the expensive table in spreading dark puddles. Neither of them moved to clean it up. They just stared, at their hands, at each other, at the space between them that suddenly felt impossibly charged with potential energy. I should go, Zaid whispered. Yes. His voice came out rough, strained, barely controlled. You should. She stood up fast, grabbed her bag, moved toward the door quickly, nearly running, paused with her hand on the cold metal handle. Didn't turn around. Couldn't look at him. Whatever happened to you, whatever she was to you, it wasn't my fault. I'm not her. Long, terrible silence behind her, then quietly, almost broken. I know. That's what terrifies me. Hold up. We need to talk about what just happened. Jin-Ro, a man who hasn't touched a woman in 17 years, just felt electricity from the smallest contact with Zaid's fingers. 17 years of walls just cracked. And you're feeling that tension, that impossibility of them being together, that slow burn chemistry that's about to explode. For my subscribers who are here till this moment, comment where you're from and answer this. Team Jin-Ro needs to move on from Sora, or team he should stay loyal to her memory? I need to know where you all stand because what happens next is going to test everyone. After she left, Jin-Ro stood completely alone in the middle of his expensive suite, staring at his hand, the one that had touched hers, the one that was still tingling, still feeling the ghost of contact. 17 years of iron discipline, 17 years of perfect control, 17 years of carefully maintained walls, cracking like thin ice under pressure. He walked slowly to his study. Sora's photograph sat on the shelf where it had been for nearly 2 decades, the only truly personal item he allowed himself to keep, the only piece of his humanity he hadn't completely locked away. He picked up the frame with both hands, looked at her frozen smile, her eternally young face, the woman who died, believing he would save her. I'm trying to keep the promise I made you, he said out loud to her image. I'm really trying. But she won't disappear, won't stay at safe distance, and I can't stop seeing her, can't stop thinking about her. He traced the edge of the frame with one gentle finger. What do I do, Sora? What am I supposed to do? The dead don't answer. They never do. They just stare with frozen eyes from photographs and graves and memories. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul glittered with a million anonymous lights, indifferent, uncaring, the city continuing its endless rhythm regardless of individual human suffering. Somewhere out there in those lights, his enemies were watching, planning, waiting patiently for him to make a mistake, waiting for weakness to show itself. And Jin-Ro was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. He was about to care again. Days 6 and 7 blurred together into a pattern that felt both inevitable and terrifying. Zaid worked her shifts, tried desperately to avoid Jin-Ro, failed consistently. He appeared in hallways at exactly the moments she was passing, asked brief questions about her well-being, wanted to know if she'd eaten, showed concern she never asked for and didn't know how to handle. She kept finding things in her locker, containers of food from expensive restaurants, small amounts of cash. Once, a pair of brand-new work shoes in exactly her size. His surveillance had stopped being merely protective and had started being invasive, overwhelming, suffocating. But she couldn't bring herself to complain, couldn't bring herself to ask him to stop, because every gift solved a problem she didn't know how to solve herself. Every act of kindness kept her and Cree alive one more day. Her coworkers started noticing the pattern, started whispering. "Why does Jin-Ro keep asking about you?" one of the older cleaning ladies asked during their break. Genuinely curious, maybe concerned. "I have absolutely no idea," Zaid lied smoothly, but she did know. Knew exactly what was happening. Something had connected them that first night when she'd stumbled through his door. Something neither of them could name or control or make disappear. Something that was growing stronger every single day despite their best efforts to maintain distance. On the 7th day after she'd crashed through his door, Zaid found one more item in her locker. A phone, small, basic, cheap prepaid model. Just one number programmed into the contacts. No name attached, just digits. A note was carefully taped to the screen in neat, precise handwriting. "If you're ever in danger, call me. I'll come." She stared at it for a long time. Should have thrown it away immediately. Should have quit her job. Should have taken Cree and bought 2 plane tickets back to Detroit and never looked back at Seoul. Instead, she slipped the phone into her pocket carefully. Because somewhere deep down, beneath all the fear and the confusion and the very reasonable terror, she knew the absolute truth. When danger came, and it would come, it always did in Jin-Ro's violent world, she would call him, and he would come. And that realization was more terrifying than anything else that had happened in the past 7 days, because it meant she was starting to trust him, starting to depend on him, starting to need him, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night at the Imperial Seoul. The hotel had finally gone quiet, that strange, heavy silence that only comes when most guests are asleep and the staff has retreated to break rooms or gone home entirely. The kind of silence that makes footsteps echo and makes you hyper-aware of every small sound. The hallways were empty, deserted, just endless corridors of expensive carpet and dimmed lighting. Zaid Rivers wheeled her cleaning cart toward the basement storage area, her last task of an impossibly long shift, restocking the storage room with fresh linens and towels, the boring, tedious work nobody else wanted, the assignment that always fell to the newest employee or the most expendable one. She was both. The fluorescent lights in the service corridor flickered overhead in that unsettling, irregular pattern, made everything look slightly sick. Wrong, like something from a horror movie, cast strange shadows on the walls that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. Something deep in her gut screamed warning. That primal instinct humans have when danger is close, when predators are watching, when something is very, very wrong. But she ignored it, pushed it down, told herself she was being paranoid. She needed to finish her shift, needed the money, needed every dollar. Couldn't afford to be scared of shadows and flickering lights like some nervous child. The storage room sat at the end of a long corridor. All concrete walls and industrial metal shelves, cold, utilitarian, isolated from the rest of the hotel. The kind of place nobody came unless they had to. Zaid pushed her cart inside, started folding towels mechanically. Her mind wandered to all the usual worries that occupied her thoughts during mindless tasks. Kree's medicine running low again, always running low. The prescription refill due in 2 days, rent due in 3 days. Still barely managing to stay ahead of eviction, Jinro's face when their fingers had touched during tea. That look of shock and terror and something else she couldn't name. The way he jerked back like he'd been burned. The heavy metal door suddenly slammed shut behind her with a bang that echoed in the concrete space. Locked. She heard the deadbolt slide into place with a decisive click. That shouldn't happen. The storage room door didn't lock from the inside. Safety regulation, fire code. You couldn't get trapped in there. Except she just had. Zaid spun around fast, heart already racing, adrenaline flooding her system. 2 men stepped out from behind the tall metal shelving units, emerging from shadows where they'd been waiting, watching, planning. Wrong clothes for hotel staff. Wrong energy entirely. They moved like predators, like hunters, like men who hurt people professionally. Tattoos visible on their necks. Elaborate designs that marked them as belonging to something. Some organization, some brotherhood of violence. Cold, professional eyes that looked at her like she was already dead, like she was just a problem to be eliminated. A task to complete. Red Dragon Triad. She didn't know how she knew, but she knew. Zaid backed away instinctively, putting distance between herself and danger, looking for exits that didn't exist. "Who are you? What do you want?" The lead operative spoke in rapid Korean, perfect Seoul accent. "Jinro's whore. You're coming with us." "I don't know what you're talking about." He lunged, fast, professionally trained, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times before. Zaid fought back with everything she had, kicked, scratched, screamed as loud as her lungs would allow. Hoped someone, anyone, would hear and come running. She got her elbow up and drove it hard into the first attacker's throat. Felt the satisfying crunch of impact. He grunted in pain and surprise. Grabbed her arm anyway with hands like iron vices. She bit down hard on his hand. Drew blood. Tasted copper and salt. He backhanded her across the face with his other hand. The impact snapped her head sideways, made her see stars, made her ears ring. The second operative grabbed her from behind before she could recover, pinned both her arms with brutal efficiency, lifted her completely off the ground like she weighed nothing. Her feet kicked uselessly in the air, a chemical-soaked cloth pressed over her mouth and nose. The smell hit her immediately. Bitter, acrid, chemical, chloroform. Panic flooded her entire system like ice water in her veins. She thrashed desperately, tried to hold her breath, couldn't, had to breathe eventually, vision already blurring at the edges, the world tilting sideways like a ship in a storm, her thoughts fragmented, scattered like puzzle pieces. Kree needs me. Can't die. Someone help. Phone. Jinro. Her hand found the phone in her uniform pocket, the cheap prepaid phone he'd given her, the one with only a single number programmed. "If you're ever in danger, call me. I'll come." She hit the only button, connected the call, couldn't speak, couldn't stay conscious. Then everything went black. The call connected. Open line, audio only. Sounds of struggle transmitted clearly through the phone speaker, muffled screaming. Men's voices speaking rapid Korean, sounds of a body hitting the floor, then terrible, ominous silence. Across the hotel, in a private conference room on the top floor, Jin-Ro sat in what should have been an important business meeting. Territory negotiations with the Busan faction, discussing borders and tribute and power-sharing arrangements. Boring. Necessary. Business as usual. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The burner line. Only one person had that number. Only one person could be calling. Zaid. He answered immediately. Didn't wait for the second ring. Heard struggling. Her muffled scream cut short. Men's voices speaking Korean with Busan accents. "Get her in the van! Hurry!" Then nothing. Just dead air. Empty connection. His entire world narrowed to that silence. Everything else ceased to exist. The room. The meeting. The men talking around him. All of it disappeared. Only that silence remained. That terrible, devastating silence. Jin-Ro stood up mid-sentence, cutting off the Busan faction leader in the middle of his proposal. "Sir?" His second-in-command looked genuinely confused. They were in the middle of delicate negotiations. "Is something—" "Get everyone out. Right now." "But the meeting is—" "She's somewhere in the building. Find her. Now." His voice came out cold, deadly. The voice that preceded violence. He moved with lethal purpose, drew the concealed weapon he always carried, started barking orders in rapid Korean to his security team. Security personnel pulled up camera feeds on tablets, scrolling through footage, looking for anomalies, finding them quickly. Two men in maintenance uniforms that didn't quite fit right, dragging an unconscious woman in a pink and white hotel uniform toward the service exit, moving fast, professional extraction. Zaid. Rage hit Jin-Ro like fire, like gasoline igniting, biblical, incandescent, overwhelming. 17 years of perfect control evaporated in a single instant. He found them in the storage corridor, moving toward the loading dock, thinking they'd already won, thinking they'd escape. He didn't call out, didn't announce himself, didn't give them a chance to surrender or explain or beg, moved silent as death, pure predator mode. The monster everyone whispered about but rarely saw, grabbed the first operative from behind without warning, spun him around with one hand, snapped his neck with brutal efficiency before the man could even register what was happening. Clean, professional, practiced. Body dropped to the floor, dead before he hit the ground. The second operative released Zaid instantly, let her crumple to the floor, reached desperately for the gun holstered at his hip. Jin-Ro was faster, so much faster, grabbed the man's wrist mid-draw, twisted, broke it with a sickening crack. The gun clattered uselessly to the concrete floor. Then Ro beat him. Not execution. Punishment. Retribution. Fists moving with controlled fury. Each strike is precise, devastating, calculated to cause maximum pain, breaking bones systematically, ribs, jaw, orbital socket. Not just killing, destroying, making an example, making sure anyone who found the body understood the message, ended it with another neck snap. Efficient. Final. The body fell beside the first. Then he shifted instantly. Completely. Predator to protector in a single heartbeat. Zaid collapsed against the cold concrete wall, barely conscious. Chloroform still in her system, bruises already forming on her face where she'd been hit. Ro dropped to his knees beside her with a heavy thud, hands hovering over her, afraid to touch. Afraid he'd hurt her somehow, afraid she'd disappear if he reached for her. "Zaid, look at me. Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open slowly, unfocused, confused, drugged. Then she saw him. Recognition flooded her bruised face. Relief. Pure relief. Like seeing rescue after drowning. You came. The words came out slurred, barely coherent. Something broke in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 17 years suddenly cracked wide open. Always. I'll always come for you. She reached for him with a trembling hand, still struggling against the drugs in her system. He took her hand carefully, first deliberate touch in 17 years, first time allowing himself this kind of contact, pulled her gently into his arms, cradled her against his chest, checked frantically for injuries beyond the obvious bruises, his hands on her face, in her hair, making absolutely sure she was real, alive, here, safe. 17 years of denied touch flooding through him all at once. Overwhelming, terrifying, intoxicating. Zaid cried against his shoulder, shook uncontrollably, clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. I thought they were going to kill me. Never. I won't let that happen. I won't lose. He stopped mid-sentence. Couldn't finish. Couldn't say it out loud. But they both knew. Both understood perfectly. I won't lose another woman in a hotel hallway. He helped her stand on shaky legs. She leaned heavily on him, all her weight, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist, supporting her, shielding her. Can you walk? I think so, maybe. They moved slowly toward the elevator, his body positioned between her and any potential threat, always scanning, always watching, always protecting. Inside the elevator going up to his suite, the only safe place, the only location he could control completely. They called me your whore, Zaid whispered, the words coming out bitter, angry. His jaw went tight, muscle jumping. You're not. Then what am I to you? He looked at her, really looked, saw the bruises forming, the terror still lingering in her dark eyes, the way she trusted him despite everything. Mine to protect. Mine to keep safe. Mine. She should have been scared of that raw possessiveness, that claiming. Instead, she felt safer than she had in years, maybe ever. In his suite, Jin-Ro settled her carefully on the couch, brought water in a crystal glass, ice wrapped in expensive cloth for the bruises already darkening her face, tended her injuries with the same hands that had just killed 2 men minutes earlier, snapped necks and broken bones, now gentle, careful, almost reverent, cleaned the scrape on her cheek with antiseptic. She flinched from the sting. Sorry. I'll be more careful. You killed them. Statement, not accusation, just processing reality. Yes, I should be horrified by that. Are you? She considered it honestly, thought about it. No, they were going to kill me. Worse. His voice came out hard, bitter. They were going to torture you for information, use you as leverage against me, then kill you when they were done. That was the plan. Why? I don't know anything about you. I don't know your business or your enemies or anything useful. He set down the cloth, looked at her directly. Because I showed you kindness. Let you matter to me. In my world, in this life I live, that's the same as claiming ownership. My enemies destroy anything I own. Anyone I care about becomes a target. Long silence. Reality settling over both of them like concrete hardening. Heavy. Permanent. I can't do this, Zaid said quietly, firmly. I should quit my job, take Cree, buy plane tickets, go back to America, start over somewhere safe. They already have your photograph, your full name, your address. They know where Cree is right now. Running won't save you. Running won't save her. They'll follow. They'll find you. They're very good at finding people. So what do I do? Just accept that I'm a target now? Just wait for the next attack? He knelt in front of her, took both her hands in his, held them carefully. "Let me protect you. Stay close to me. Trust me to keep you safe." "I don't know if I can trust you. I killed 2 men tonight to keep you alive. What more proof do you possibly need?" Tears fell down her bruised face. "This isn't what I wanted from life. I just wanted to survive. Take care of Cree. Stay invisible. Stay safe. That's all. That's all I ever wanted." His voice broke slightly, emotion leaking through. "I know. God, I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you got caught up in my world. Why me? Why did you even notice me that first night? Because when you crashed through my door looking terrified, you still looked at me like I was human, like I was a person instead of a monster. I haven't felt human in 17 years. What happens now?" she asked, needing a plan, needing something concrete to hold on to. "Now I make absolutely sure this never happens again." "How?" "You stay with me, in my suite, under my security, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week." "I can't leave Cree alone. She comes too. I'll have her brought here tonight, full medical care, everything she needs, private doctor, proper medications, clean air, everything. You're taking over my entire life." "I'm saving your life. Learn the difference." Anger flashed hot in her chest, but also undeniable care, undeniable protection. He was offering safety she couldn't provide herself. "If I agree to this arrangement, I need your word on something. You don't hurt me. You don't control me. Protect me, yes, but don't own me. Don't treat me like property." "Agreed. And Cree stays safe, no matter what happens, no matter what it costs, no matter what war comes. She stays safe. I promise, on everything I have, she stays safe." She extended her hand formally. "Deal." He took it, shook like they were sealing a business contract, but didn't let go afterward, held it, thumb brushing gently across her knuckles. "I won't let anyone hurt you again. That's a promise." She believed him, completely. Zaid just made a deal with Jin-Ro. She's moving into his suite, accepting his protection, letting him into her life completely. And you're watching this unfold, feeling every emotion, completely invested in whether she's making the right choice or walking into a beautiful disaster. But here's what's eating at me. Some of you are experiencing this exact same moment of decision right now. Zaid chose to trust Jin-Ro with her life. I'm asking you to trust me with your time by hitting subscribe on Black Hope Tales. And just like Zaid, you're hesitating. You're uncertain. You're waiting. So I'm asking, why are you choosing to miss the rest of this story? Subscribe right now, or drop a comment and tell me what's stopping you. And for everyone who is subscribed, you're the real ones. Comment where you're watching from and tell me, is Zaid making the right choice trusting Jin-Ro, or is she walking into something she won't survive? That night, Zaid slept in Jin-Ro's guest room with Cree beside her in the second bed. Her little sister brought over with all her belongings and medications, set up like she'd always been there. First time in 7 years, Zaid felt truly, completely safe. Safe enough to actually sleep without nightmares, without waking up every hour checking on Cree, without one eye always open for the next disaster. In the next room, Ro sat awake in the dark, staring at his hands, the same hands that had snapped necks and wiped tears in the same hour, killed and comforted, destroyed and protected. He'd broken his 17-year vow, shattered it completely and irrevocably, touched a woman deliberately, held her, comforted her, let her matter. Somewhere across Seoul in a dark office building, the Red Dragon Triad leadership was learning that 2 experienced operatives had failed to return from a simple extraction job. War was coming. Inevitable. Bloody. But for the first time since Sora died in his arms, Jinro had something worth fighting for, something worth killing for, something worth potentially dying for. God help anyone who tried to take it from him. Zaid woke up disoriented in a bed that definitely wasn't hers. Luxury sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Sunlight pouring through massive floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of view that belonged in architecture magazines. Panic hit first and hard. Where was she? What happened? Where was Kree? Then memory crashed back in devastating waves. The attack, the chloroform, Jinro killing 2 men, everything. She bolted out of bed and ran to the next room on shaky legs, found Kree sleeping peacefully in the second bedroom. Actually, peacefully. Not struggling to breathe. Not wheezing. Not fighting for every breath like usual. An oxygen monitor beeped softly beside the bed. Medical equipment Jinro had somehow arranged and had delivered overnight. Professional grade. Hospital quality. The air in the room felt different. Properly humidified. Filtered. Clean. No dust particles floating in the sunlight. No mold spores. No pollution. Kree looked better. Actually, noticeably better. Color in her face. Breathing easy. Chest rising and falling naturally instead of that horrible labored pattern. Proper humidity in the air. No dust, no mold. Medication administered on time and in correct doses for once. Zaid stood there in the doorway just watching her sister breathe, crying quietly, relief and guilt and gratitude all mixed together into something overwhelming. Relief that Kree was safe and breathing. Guilt that it took a dangerous man's intervention to provide what Zaid couldn't. Gratitude so profound it hurt. In the main living area, Jinro sat at the massive dining table. Breakfast spread out like something from a luxury hotel magazine. Traditional Korean food arranged beautifully. Western options that looked equally impressive. Everything prepared perfectly. He was already dressed for business. Expensive suit. Hair slicked back. The cold, controlled boss version of himself. The mask he showed the world. But when he saw her emerge from the guest room, something softened in his expression. Just slightly. Just for a moment. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months." She sat down carefully, still sore from yesterday. "I hate that it was here. Hate that I needed rescuing. Hate that I couldn't provide this for Kree myself." A slight smile, almost imperceptible. "Honesty. That's good. I appreciate honesty." Kree joined them a few minutes later, moving carefully, shy, curious, studying this scary man her sister had somehow gotten tangled up with. This man who'd killed people, but also saved them. "Thank you," Kree said quietly, sincerely. "For the medicine, for this room, for helping Zaid, for everything." Ro looked almost uncomfortable with direct gratitude, like he didn't know how to handle genuine appreciation. "You're welcome. If you need anything at all, just tell me." Kree watched him for a long, evaluating moment. Then looked at Zaid with knowing eyes. "He's not as scary as you made him sound last night." "Give it time," Zaid muttered into her coffee. After breakfast, Ro laid out the new rules, the new reality, the boundaries of their arrangement. "You can't leave the building without security escort, either of you. No exceptions." "That's house arrest," Zaid said flatly. "That's staying alive." "For how long exactly?" "Until the Red Dragon Triad situation is handled completely." "And when will that be?" "When I say it is." No room for negotiation in his tone. The control felt suffocating, overwhelming, but also necessary, rational. She hated both things equally. Kree touched her arm gently. "Zaid, if it keeps us safe." "Fine," frustration in every syllable. "But I'm not a prisoner. I won't be treated like property." "No," Ro said carefully. "You're protected. Remember the difference." The arrangement was surprisingly simple once established. Zaid kept working. Hotel housekeeping, but only the 12th floor now. Only VIP suites. Only day shifts. No more overnight work. No more basement storage rooms. She handled Ro's suite personally. No other staff allowed in. Too many secrets. Too much risk. They lived in the guest wing of his massive suite. 2 bedrooms, shared living space. Like roommates. Like family. Like something neither of them knew how to name. Cree started online university courses that Ro paid for without being asked. Private doctor came weekly to check her breathing and adjust medications. Everything provided. Everything handled. Food, clothes, medical care, education, security. Whatever they needed appeared like magic. The debt accumulated in Zaid's head, even though Ro insisted repeatedly there wasn't one. Insisted this wasn't charity or transaction. Insisted she owed him nothing. Days 8 through 10 were awkward. Strange. Uncomfortable. 3 people learning to share space. Learning new rhythms. Establishing unspoken rules. Zaid worked her shifts during the day. Avoided Ro's personal space when possible. Tried to maintain independence and dignity. Evenings they all ended up together somehow. Gravitating to the shared living area like planets in orbit. Cree doing homework at the dining table, spread out with textbooks and laptop and notes everywhere. Zaid cooking dinner because she absolutely needed to contribute something. Needed to feel useful. Needed to not feel like charity case. Ro working from his home office, emerging occasionally for meals or coffee or just to check on them. Dangerous man, desperate woman, sick girl, playing family without calling it that. Unexpected moments of genuine softness appeared in the spaces between tension. Ro teaching Cree Korean history while Zaid cooked, his voice patient and knowledgeable. Cree absolutely fascinated, asking endless questions. Zaid catching him watching a Korean drama on his laptop late at night. He looked genuinely embarrassed when caught, almost human. Cree laughing. Actually laughing out loud. First time in months, maybe longer. The sound so surprising and precious, Zaid stopped what she was doing just to listen. Day 11, Ro showed Zaid into his private study, closed the door for privacy, pulled out security reports, intelligence files, photographs, Red Dragon Triad leadership photos, enemy associates, known locations, operating patterns. These people want to hurt you, want to use you. You need to know their faces, memorize them. She studied each photograph carefully, memorizing features, names, details, survival skills activating, learning to identify threats. Why do they hate you so much? I controlled territory they want, killed people they cared about, disrupted their operations. I exist as competition. That's enough. Is there any way to make peace, to negotiate? In my world? He almost smiled, but it was bitter. Peace is just the moment of quiet before the next war starts. That sounds exhausting. Yes, it is. Every single day. Day 12. Training started in Ro's private gym in the basement. Professional equipment. Everything needed to train someone properly. I'm going to teach you to protect yourself. I already know how to fight. I grew up in Detroit. I've defended myself before. You know how to survive random attacks. I'm teaching you how to kill trained professionals if it becomes absolutely necessary. The training was brutal, practical, efficient. No sport fighting, no rules, just survival. Knife work, hand-to-hand combat, situational awareness, gun handling, pressure points, how to disable someone quickly. He was patient, thorough, professional. occasionally touched her to correct her stance or adjust her grip. Each touch lingered just slightly too long. Both of them noticed. Both pretended not to. Day 13. Late night. Zaid couldn't sleep. Too much on her mind. Too many thoughts spinning. Found Ro on the balcony, smoking. Rare habit, watching Seoul's endless light spread out below like fallen stars. Can't sleep either. I don't sleep much. Haven't in years. She joined him at the railing, kept respectful distance, didn't want to intrude. City sounds drifted up from far below, distant traffic, life continuing. Silence stretched comfortable between them. Do you regret it? She asked finally. Showing me kindness that first day? He considered the question seriously. No. Do you regret crashing through my door? Every single day, and also not at all. That's accurate. More comfortable silence. Then she pushed. Needed to know. Tell me about her. About Sora. He stiffened immediately, every muscle tensing, but he talked, haltingly at first, then more freely, the words coming easier as he went. How they met, her laugh. The way she saw good in him when nobody else did. The plan to escape, the betrayal, holding her as she died in that hallway. I failed her, trusted the wrong person, and she paid for it with her life. It wasn't your fault. Park betrayed you both. He made that choice. I should have known, should have been smarter, should have protected her better. You loved her. Love makes us stupid, makes us trust, makes us vulnerable. He looked at her directly. Something shifted in his dark eyes. Does it? Loaded question. Dangerous territory. I should try to sleep, Zaid said. Breaking the moment, stepping back. Zaid! She stopped, didn't turn around. Thank you for listening, for not judging. Thank you for trusting me with her story. Day 14. Ro left early for business, some meeting that required his personal attention. Zaid found his study destroyed when she went to clean. Fist-shaped dents in the expensive desk, wall punched through, actual hole in the drywall, dried blood on the leather punching bag, knuckles split open and bled freely. He'd done this last night, after their conversation about Sora, after letting himself be vulnerable. The rage and pain still so close to his surface, still so raw after 17 years. She didn't clean it, didn't touch anything, left it exactly as evidence of his humanity, proof that he wasn't just ice and control. When he returned hours later, she was waiting, sitting calmly in the wreckage, no judgment on her face. You saw? Yes. I'll have it repaired. I'm sorry you had to see this. Why did you do it? Long silence. Then, honestly, talking about Sora reminded me how completely I failed her. Looking at you reminds me I could fail you too. I can't survive that twice. I won't survive losing someone else. She stood up slowly, walked directly to him, stopped just inches away, close enough to feel his warmth. Then don't fail me. Stay with me. Fight with me, not against me. You don't understand what you're asking. I'm asking you to stop punishing yourself for being human, for having feelings, for caring. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, wanting desperately to touch her, holding back with visible effort. If I touch you, if I let myself want you, I won't be able to stop. Then don't stop. The air went electric, charged, suffocating with tension. They almost kissed, lips inches apart, both of them leaning forward, the space between them disappearing. His phone rang. Shattered everything like glass breaking, he answered with visible frustration. Expression immediately darkened, hardened, hung up after brief conversation. They're making their move. Multiple locations. Coordinated attack. Red Dragon Triad had just attacked 3 of his business locations simultaneously. Clear message. War officially declared. He had to respond, had to lead, had to show strength or lose everything. "You're going to fight them," Zaid said. Statement, not question. "Yes. And I stay here, safe, protected." "Where you're safe." "Yes." "Who keeps you safe when you're out there?" He touched her face gently. First time initiating tender contact. "Knowing you're here waiting. That's enough. That keeps me focused." He left with armed men. War in his eyes. Violence in his posture. The monster everyone feared. Zaid watched from the massive windows, Cree beside her. "You love him," Cree said quietly. "Certainly." "I barely know him." "That's not what I asked." Silence. Because the answer terrified her. Because it was true and impossible and dangerous. Jin-Ro went to war that night. Not cold strategy, not calculated business. Something primal, personal, visceral. They'd threatened what was his, attacked what he'd claimed, unforgivable. In the penthouse far above the violence, Zaid paced restlessly, learning in real time what it meant to care about someone in constant danger, understanding finally what Sora must have felt every single time he walked into violence, every time he left for business that might end in bloodshed, understanding why he'd locked himself away for 17 years, why he'd sworn never to care again. Loving someone in his world meant living with constant terror of loss, meant every goodbye might be final, meant waiting and hoping and praying they'd come back alive. Too late to walk away now, too late to protect her heart. Some doors seal shut behind you the moment you walk through them. No going back, no escape. They were locked in together now, for better or worse, for life or death. 4 a.m. Zaid woke on the couch where she'd fallen asleep waiting, and Jin-Ro stood in the doorway of his suite at the Imperial Soul covered in blood. She ran to him without thinking. "Are you hurt?" "Not my blood." His voice came out hollow, exhausted, the voice of someone who'd spent hours doing terrible things. Relief hit so hard her knees almost gave out. She touched his face with trembling hands, needing to confirm he was real and alive and here. He leaned into her palm like a man starving for gentleness, his eyes closing, breath shuddering. "I was afraid," she whispered. "So was I." The honesty hung between them until Cree emerged asking if everyone was okay, and the moment shattered. Zaid helped him clean up in silence, tending split knuckles while he sat perfectly still, lost somewhere dark she couldn't follow. Over breakfast he made the announcement. "The war escalates. They won't stop coming. You need to train seriously, every day, until you can protect yourself and Cree if I'm not here." "You think they'll reach us here?" "I'm not willing to gamble on thinking they won't." Cree surprised them both. "I want to learn too." "No," they said simultaneously. "I'm not helpless just because I'm sick." "Teach me too." Ro studied her, then nodded. "Basic defense only. Nothing that compromises your breathing." The training consumed them. Morning conditioning, afternoon technique, knives, hand-to-hand, improvised weapons, evening simulations of escape routes and emergency protocols. R.O. pushed Zaid past every limit she thought she had, his hands correcting her stance, his voice demanding more, his rare praise meaning everything. On day 16, during sparring practice, he had her pinned to the mat, wrists above her head, body covering hers, both breathing hard, faces inches apart. "Make me let go," he commanded. She hooked her leg around his and used his weight against him, flipping their positions. For one electric second, she was on top, shocked she'd managed it. Their eyes locked with want neither could pretend away. "Are you two training or just wrestling?" Kree's voice broke the tension. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. During knife work the next day, his chest pressed against her back as he guided her strikes. "You go for kill shots," he murmured at her ear. "Throat, heart, femoral. No mercy." "I don't know if I can kill someone." "You can if it's you or them, if it's Kree or them." She turned in his arms. "Does it get easier?" "No. It gets necessary. That's different." Late that evening on their balcony, she asked about his mother. He told her about the bomb, the funeral where his father forbade crying, how grief was trained out of him at 12 years old. "I feel things now," he admitted quietly. "I've felt more in 2 weeks than I have in 17 years. Because of you." She told him about her parents. The car accident she wasn't in because she'd chosen work over family, the guilt that never faded. "Being left behind is its own kind of death," he said, taking her hand deliberately. The first sustained touch that wasn't training or crisis. She held on. On day 20, he took her to his mother's grave, brought flowers like he did every month, showed her the part of himself that still mourned, still tried to be someone his mother would recognize. Walking back through autumn leaves, he touched her face. "Can I?" She nodded. He bent toward her, lips almost meeting hers. "Sir, we should move. Too exposed." Security's voice crackled through their earpieces. He stepped back, frustrated. "Later." "Promise?" "Promise." That night they stood on the balcony, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest, soul glittering below. Trust, connection, hope, the most dangerous things either had attempted in years. Trust, Jinro learned, was more lethal than any weapon. Because weapons could be disarmed, but trust made you vulnerable, made you human, made you care about someone else more than yourself. And in the streets far below, the Red Dragon Triad had watched the cemetery visit, had seen Jinro protecting a woman who clearly mattered, had seen love beginning. They knew exactly how to use it against him. The clock was ticking. The trap was set. And in 48 hours, everything would explode. Day 21 at the Imperial Soul arrived with unusual quiet. No attacks overnight. No emergency calls. Just morning light and the smell of breakfast cooking. Kree attended her virtual class while Zaid helped Jinro in the kitchen, laughing as he corrected her knife technique. "You're supposed to slice, not hack." "I'm a cleaner, not a chef. You can learn." He paused, something shifting in his expression. "I want you to have skills beyond survival, beyond fear." She stopped cutting. "You want me to have a future?" "Yes." "With you?" The question hung between them like morning mist. "If you want it," he said quietly. That evening brought a neutral syndicate meeting, territorial agreements, status checks. Ro had to attend, show strength. When Zaid said she wanted to come, wanted to know his world completely, he studied her face before nodding. Formal dress. You don't leave my side. The gown he sent arrived in deep burgundy, elegant and perfectly fitted. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. When Ro entered and stopped dead, unable to speak, she felt self-conscious. "It's just a dress." "No, you were beautiful before the dress. This just helps the rest of the world see it." In his study before leaving, she paced nervously. "I don't know how to act at these things." He caught her hand, stopping her movement. "Be the woman who survived 7 years alone in a foreign country, who raised her sister, who fought off kidnappers, who learned to kill in 2 weeks. Be her." She's terrifying. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her chest. Why me? You hadn't touched anyone in 17 years. I crashed through your door 3 weeks ago and everything changed. Why? He walked to the window, back to her. When Sora died, I decided feeling anything was death. For 17 years, I was ice. I functioned, ruled, survived, but I didn't live. He turned to face her. Then you stumbled in, starving and exhausted, and you looked at me like I was human, like you saw a person, not a monster. You were a defibrillator, shocking a dead heart back to life. And now you're the reason I wake up, the reason I come home, the reason I'm terrified every second because I know what I have to lose. She crossed to him. I've spent 7 years invisible, just labor and sacrifice. But you saw me, Zaid, the person, and you're the first who actually did. They stood inches apart, the pull undeniable. If I kiss you, it changes everything, he whispered. Everything's already changed. I'm not a good man, Zaid. I don't want a good man. I want you, complicated, violent, broken you. The man who feeds strangers and kills enemies. I'm choosing this, choosing you. For once, I'm choosing something for me. He kissed her finally, desperately. 17 years of denial breaking. His hands in her hair, her hands gripping his shoulders, all the tension of 3 weeks combusting between them. They broke apart, breathing hard. We have to go to this event. I know. But after. They drove through Seoul's rain toward the Apex Hotel, her hand in his. Both aware this night would change everything. Both choosing it anyway. What they didn't know was that Park's son had planned this event specifically. That the neutral meeting was a trap. That in 2 hours, Zaid would collapse with poison in her veins. That Jin-Ro would have to choose between his empire and her life. Some nights echo forever. This one would echo longest of all. The Apex Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with Seoul's underworld elite, power wrapped in expensive suits and designer gowns. Jin-Ro entered with his arm around Zaid, publicly claiming her, and whispers rippled through the crowd. That's her, the one he broke his vow for. Across the room, Park's son Kim Tae-jin watched with predatory eyes. She's more beautiful than the photos, his lieutenant murmured. Kim smiled coldly. She'll be more beautiful when she's dead and he's broken. During dinner, Ro kept his hand on Zaid's thigh beneath the table. Grounding, possessive. She observed everything, noticing nervous waitstaff and Kim's constant stare. Halfway through the meal, Kim stood proposing a toast. To old debts settled and new alliances formed. Everyone raised their glasses. Zaid drank the deep red wine. 10 minutes later, dizziness hit her. Vision blurred. She gripped Ro's arm. Something's wrong. He saw her dilated pupils immediately. You've been poisoned. Kim's voice carried across the room. Leaving so soon? But the night's just begun. His smile was triumphant. Another woman you care about, dying. Different hotel, same outcome. History loves to repeat. Ro understood instantly. What poison? Slow acting. Maybe 30 minutes. I have the only antidote. Your territory, your empire, everything my father died trying to take. Sign it over, and she lives. Zaid, weakening, gripped him. Don't give him anything. Quiet, I'm getting you out. Kim laughed. You won't make it to a hospital in time. Ro held Zaid as she collapsed, Sora's death overlapping with this moment in devastating deja vu. Hotel, ballroom, woman dying, him powerless. Forget me, Zaid whispered. Get Kree safe. Never, I won't lose you. He looked at Kim, then made his choice. Kill him. Jinro just made his choice. But some of you still haven't made yours. You're watching Zaid die from poison, feeling every second of Jinro's panic, completely invested in whether he saves her or loses everything like he did with Sora. And you still haven't subscribed to Black Hope Tales. Subscribe right now or drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and do you think Jinro made the right choice. Gunfire erupted. Ro's hidden security activated instantly. The ballroom descended into chaos, screaming, running, blood on marble. Ro shielded Zaid, carrying her while shooting with his free hand, pursuing Kim through service corridors that echoed with ghosts. He cornered Kim in the kitchen. When Kim pulled his gun, Ro shot his hand. You're wrong about two things. First, I'm not the broken man I was 17 years ago. Second, you're going to tell me where the antidote is before I let you die. Surgical torture. Kim screamed, revealing the antidote hidden in his car. Ro's men retrieved it in 45 seconds. He administered it himself, holding Zaid. Stay with me. Her breathing steadied. Color returned. Kim begged for mercy. Ro shot him execution style. No mercy for people who threaten mine. In the car racing to his private hospital, Zaid woke. What happened? I chose you. Over everything. Kim? Dead. She squeezed his hand. Thank you for not letting me go. I can't. I tried for 17 years. I can't anymore. Days later, back at the Imperial Soul's penthouse, they stood on their balcony. Kree was inside, thriving, talking about attending physical university. She called them disgustingly cute. What happens now? Zaid asked. I'm leaving the syndicate, going legitimate. I've lived in violence for 20 years. Maybe it's time to live differently. Because of me? Because of you. And because I'm tired. And because Sora would have wanted me to find peace. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for real. This is real. You, me, Kree. It's the most real thing I've had since I was 27. They kissed, tender, not desperate, a promise in every breath. Below, a black car parked in shadows, watching, waiting. New threats would come. But for the first time in 17 years, Jinro wasn't facing them alone. He had Zaid, fierce, brave, stubborn Zaid, standing beside him. History said they couldn't last. But they were betting everything that history could be wrong, that broken people could create something whole, together.